Kashmir has been a long disputed area between India and Pakistan ever since their independence in 1947. In 1947, British India, which was ruled by Great Britain, split into a Hindu-majority India and a Muslim-majority Pakistan. During the partition, each of the princely states chose to join India or Pakistan. The Hindu-majority states joined India and the Muslim-majority states joined Pakistan, but Kashmir was an exception. It was ruled by a Hindu monarch, but it was a Muslim majority. The king originally wanted Kashmir to be independent, but the people wanted to join Pakistan and ended up rebelling. Things got out of hand and escalated very quickly, so the Hindu monarch decided to call the Indian army to handle the protesters with force. This caused Pakistan to get involved, and this is where in 1947 the First Kashmir War was fought. In the end, 1/3 of Kashmir was controlled by Pakistan and 2/3 controlled by India. The 1965 Indo-Pak War was also about Kashmir, but went a little bit differently than the draw or stalemate originally in 1947. In 1965, the Pakistani armed forces had 260,000 men, whereas Indian armed forces had 700,000 men. The Pakistani Air Force had 280 aircraft, whereas the Indian Air Force had 700 plus aircraft. The Pakistani army had 756 tanks, whereas the Indian army had 720 tanks. With artillery, Pakistan had 552, India with 628. In early August of 1965, uprisings started in Kashmir again, and as a result, between 26,000 and 33,000 Pakistani soldiers crossed the line of control, which is a line separating Indian and Pakistani-controlled Kashmir. This was Operation Gilbertar. This wasn't the start of the war though, as Kashmir isn't an administered state of India or Pakistan, so it wasn't a violation of India's sovereignty as defined by the United Nations. India counterattacked to try and stop the Pakistani army, which was allied with Kashmiri locals. Both sides had some success. On the 1st of September, Pakistan launched a counterattack to the Indian forces called Operation Grand Slam. The operation object was to capture the town of Akhnur in Indian-controlled Kashmir. Pakistani forces brought tanks in numbers and made gains against the Indian forces, which suffered heavy losses. India then brought in their air force to try and stop the Pakistani advances. Pakistan responded with the air force battling away at the Indian ones. The official war begins as India openly crosses the international border into Pakistan and invades the Pakistani province of Punjab on September 6 in 1965. This was a violation of Pakistan's sovereignty, which isn't allowed under UN rules. The 15th Infantry Division of India invaded Punjab, which is a major province in Pakistan. Although the attack was very strong and India had numbers, Pakistan was able to successfully protect Lahore, a major city, from Indian aggression. The invasion was repulsed with the help of the Air Force and defense troops, with India suffering heavy losses. This was one of the great victories of the Pakistani military, as they repelled Indian military despite being smaller in numbers and with less equipment. Aerial warfare was a huge part of the 1965 Indo-Pak War, as in the 1947 Indo-Pak War, they didn't go head-to-head. In aerial warfare, the Indian Air Force outnumbered the Pakistani Air Force 5-1. The results were very surprising, as in the end, the Pakistani Air Force lost 20 aircraft, whereas the Indian Air Force lost in between 60 to 75 aircraft. India had 17 aerial victories, while Pakistan had 30 aerial victories, giving Pakistan the clear edge in aerial combat. The real hero of the war was the Pakistani pilot M.M. Alam. He set a world record of taking down 5 Indian fighter jets in less than a minute, whose record still stands today. This war had some of the largest tank battles since World War II. The Battle of Asal Uttar and the Battle of Chawinda were some of the biggest. The Battle of Asal Uttar was won by India along the international border. The biggest tank battle of the war was the Battle of Chawinda. India lost 500 tanks, whereas Pakistan lost 210. To celebrate the successful defense of Lahore and honor the lives lost in the 1965 war, Pakistan has a national holiday called Defense Day. This was one of the aftermaths of the defense of Lahore, which was on September 6, 1965. The war ended on September 23, 1965. A ceasefire was declared through UNSC Resolution 211. following a diplomatic intervention by the Soviet Union and the United States, and the subsequent issuance of the Tashkent Declaration. The ceasefire came after the Battle of Chawenda, a famous tank victory for Pakistan, although some state it was conclusive. Both countries controlled land of one another. There was no territorial changes though. Let's hear some interviews from the soldiers in the war.
एक लेफ्टिनेंट था जूनियर ऑफिसर, हम लोग छांगा मांगा पे थे, वेटिंग फॉर वॉर। हम तैयार हुए थे कि अभी जंग शुरू होती है, अभी जंग शुरू होती है।
जब हम ट्रेंच में बैठे थे तो फ्रंट एक कॉल आई, इन्फॉर्मेशन आई कि लाहौर पर कि एक बहुत मार्का का रन पड़ रहा है, ख़ास लाहौर से 20-30 मील इधर उधर, और इंडियंस आर अबाउट टू ब्रेक इन विद देयर टैंक्स एंड एयर फोर्स इज रिक्वायर्ड।
हम गए मिडनाइट, 6 या 7 या 8 सितंबर था। उन्होंने बिल्कुल बम्बार्डमेंट की आधा घंटा, और इसमें बाबर लीड कर रहा था। सबमरीन जो है ना, इधर हम सबमरीन ऑपरेट कर रही थी बॉम्बे के बाहर।
मैग्नम ऑपस एयरफोर्स का था, दैट वाज द स्ट्रेटेजिक स्ट्राइक, टू स्ट्राइक ऑल द बेसिस। जब असर खान साहब ने हमें दिया था, उन्हें ये समझाया था कि हम डस्क के वक्त, ये शाम के वक्त करेंगे अटैक।
मैंने जाके अंदर घुस के मारा उनको।
सेकेंड वर्ल्ड वार के बाद सबसे बड़ी टैंक लड़ाई जो थी यहाँ पे थी। ये जब 60 टैंक और उन्होंने 60 टैंक डिस्ट्रॉय किए तो उनका सीओ भी अपना टैंक छोड़ गया।
So who won the war? Well, in the end, both sides claimed victory, but if we take a look at the stats, it's clear that Pakistan was victorious. They were able to defend against a country 7 times larger than itself. About 8,200 Indian soldiers were killed or captured, whereas Pakistan's loss was 5,259 men. This war had many impacts, some of which were mentioned before, like Defense Day. Another impact was that it created more tensions in the Kashmir area between Pakistan and India. It also gave more confidence to the Pakistani military to show that it could defend against a country more than 7 times its size when being invaded. To connect it to the theme, it's a frontier for tank warfare, as it was some of the biggest since World War II, and it's a frontier for the Pakistani military, as they were able to defend against a much better, heavily armed Indian army. This war also made Kashmir a permanent frontier in history, in their struggle for freedom and for what they want. That's just about it for the 1965 Indo-Pak War. Hopefully one day these two nations will be able to peacefully agree on something for this disputed Kashmir area and one day have permanent peace.